Part 32. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 311. Compared with cartoonists who debuted at about the same time, Makoto Takahashi is undoubtedly quite successful, but compared to those veteran cartoonists who have been famous for a long time, Makoto Takahashi still lacks a lot in every aspect, but none of this can deny the fact that Yuisha treats the cartoonist Hohoin Koshin with a preference that would make other cartoonists jealous. Let's take this new serial Dream Eater as an example. Evidence 1, just because of the new serialization of the first chapter, I got the opportunity to be featured on the cover. As the characters on the colorful masthead, they are naturally the two protagonists of the comic Dream Eaters, the blue-eyed classmate holding a paintbrush, and the inseparable good friend Huang Mao Glasses Jun. Although the original idea of this comic was originated from Yu Yachin Mu Menjai is a cartoonist, but if you want to understand this fact, you have to at least read the comics to understand it. Evidence 2, although cartoonists have the right to add some more harmonious words in their works, but usually, conscientious editors will advise cartoonists to use erasure except for the explanations related to the plot. Come and show off your cute words. However, in the fierce new series Dream Eaters by the manga artist Hohoin, Makoto Takahashi enjoys special treatment, and some words that have nothing to do with the work are actually preserved. Evidence 3, cartoonists who have been serializing comics for a long time will always enter endless issue mode, but when you start to update comics or start a new serial, unlike Takahashi Makoto, you can't get publicity and recommendations from the comic magazine itself, although Yoshida is telling Takahashi Makoto that this is about the favor from the editor was retorted by Makoto Takahashi saying it is too shabby as a reward for my uncle who has been serializing for so many years. Without interruption. However, the effect is still good, at least for many readers. Man, I am also looking forward to the upcoming new serial Dream Eater. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Regarding this comic, in order to keep it mysterious, the editor did not announce the specific content and theme of the comic. It just briefly said that the protagonists are two teenagers, but this news alone is enough to arouse curiosity. Readers sighed, it's been a lot of fun. So on the day when the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, the first thing many readers did when they picked up the comic was to jump directly to this new serial to see what kind of comic Dream Eater is. Although the title sounds very sci-fi, many readers said they were deceived by the title. At the beginning of the comic, it tells the story of a young Shota and his cartoonist uncle. The young Shota has shown excellent drawing talent since he was a child. He yearns for his uncle, a cartoonist, and is inspired to become a cartoonist in the future. A certain cartoonist read a new serial titled Dream Eaters and had a complex look on his face that was difficult to express in words. Hey, Supreme, are you okay? Finding that his good friend suddenly fell into the sluggish rhythm of memory killing, a certain yellow guy didn't seize the opportunity to save the strategy, but used the most brutal way to break the memory killing. Important flag, as expected, after becoming a wife controller, it is a difficult task to change jobs and become a gay man, Kauya. Recently, due to the incident involving the CEO's sister, even though Landai tried his best to appear full of fighting spirit, no matter whether he is a good gay friend or the wife of a good gay friend, they can all feel the pressure on Landai. But even as the closest comrade and gay friend, he is powerless to intervene in this kind of thing. After all, although Ajuma Menha is a famous cartoonist, he is not as reliable as Takahashi Makoto or Nyaizuma Eiji. Using the so-called fame to rewrite society's perception, speaking of planning and actually doing this, I'm afraid it's only a certain middle schooler who treats the world's human beings as toys, right? I just thought of something. As he absent-mindedly flipped through the comics in his hand, Landai's eyes revealed an abnormal light that was difficult to understand for the man with yellow-haired glasses. After being silent for a long time, Landai slowly opened his mouth and said to his good friend in a comforting way, "Man, I'm really fine, Kairan. Speaking of, most importantly, I just want to know how that guy Aiken knows these things, Although he found that his good friend was perfunctory, the yellow-haired glasses man did not tell the truth, but tried his best to change the topic. On top of that, you only told me a little bit about your uncle back then. Although you learned a little bit about it from other people later, but why does Aiken know about this memory of your uncle getting along with you? That's because Aiken's middle school boy was also there back then. Landai shrugged helplessly, with a look of disbelief on his face. Speaking of which, that guy Aiken was obviously a cute guy back then. Just a young Shota, why has he evolved into such a ferocious Chuyuni? And the guy who was clearly not as good at painting as me back then has now reached a height that is difficult for us to chase. This is Landai's unfinished voice, not only for good friends, but also for now and in the future. And what? Seeing the uncomfortable look on his good friend's face, as if recalling some unfortunate incident, a certain yellow guy immediately became energetic and asked with a gossipy face. Tisk. That guy Aiken is really. Landai showed a helpless bitter smile on his face, pointed at the uncle of the little boy in the comic, and explained to his good friend, Aiken came to my house specially to draw this content, and talked with my father for a long time. Unfortunately, I didn't go home that night, so I don't know what they talked about. But I heard from my mother that my father drank too much that night and kept saying thank you. Well, my grandfather was the same. Hey. Hey. What did that guy Takahashi Makoto do? A certain yellow-haired man once again experienced Takahashi Makoto's incomprehensible second-year worldview, and brutal brainwashing ability. Who knows? Hey. This is. Landai stopped flipping through the comics and looked at his best friend in surprise. He asked seriously, Hey, Kairan, do you still remember the comics that Cheng showed me? I remember. I know what you want to say. The yellow-haired man with glasses pushed his glasses, trying to hide the serious expectation under his glasses. Although I have a guess now, I can't prove it now. But if it is really as I guessed, Supreme, you have to thank Cheng. The serialized content is different from what everyone saw on the cartoonist side. The content of the comics has indeed changed. It's not that the plot suddenly developed, but that something that makes people feel very worried did not appear. The content of the comics has jumped from telling the memories of the little Shota to when he became a junior high school student, but up to now, this junior high school student who is suspected to be the protagonist has still not revealed his name to the readers. Dream Eater is not like the world of DN, where there is a death god who loves apples, and the setting that you will die once your name is revealed. From the previous content, this comic does not have superpowers or monsters, these products of the fantasy world, but just a simple everyday world. And the previous content seems to be relatively bland. Except for the plot of the male protagonist's uncle's death, which makes the readers feel unexpected but expected. Most of the content of this comic so far is a male protagonist who refuses to reveal his name, constantly complaining about his or others' muddled life. Of course, there are also some readers with sharp eyes and good memory. When they saw the plot about the male protagonist's secret love for a girl in the same class, they subconsciously exclaimed something like, "Isn't this the previously serialized Aobatoki?" Although some fans of Miss Aoki Hong also had hostility like how Iwan Kuma actually shamelessly started plagiarizing, there has never been a rule that similar plots cannot appear in serialized comics, right? If that's the case, the hero who carries the aura of the protagonist, at the critical moment suddenly counterattacks the villain and saves the world and his partners. Is it also a blatant plagiarism? Moreover, would Takahashi Makoto, who calls himself a plagiarism devil, care about such things? Humph, the wisdom of mortals. However, the following plot makes readers extremely happy, and the cartoonist named Yashiro Mumanjai is blushing. After all, how many people can smile calmly when it comes to their own youthful and frivolous behavior? Embarrassment is inevitable. If you want to empathize with it, you can go back and find your junior high school essays, preferably with the title My Ideal is XX, and then invite your family or friends as the audience to recite the full text with deep emotion. Maybe in this way, you can further understand Yashiro Mumanji's feelings, and the synchronization rate really shouldn't be too high. As the male protagonist, Mashiro Tautu, inspired by another male protagonist, Takagi Akito, made a surprising declaration to the girl, Azumi Miho, whom he had always had a crush on. So when that dream comes true, please marry me. The main plot of the comic has been clarified, telling the story of how two boys become cartoonists. The content of the comic has been determined, which is the process of the male protagonist Mashiro Tautu constantly fighting for his promise with the female protagonist Azumi Miho. However, the most surprising thing for the readers is that the names of the characters appeared at the end of the first chapter of the comic. The male protagonists are Mashiro Tautu and Takagi Akito, and the female protagonist is Azumi Miho. In the world where the readers live, there is no large-scale magic such as angel fall that affects the world by a sun-obsessed person, and people's inner and appearance have not been completely replaced, so the readers naturally remember the incident that caused a sensation in the comics industry a few days ago. Puff. Mashiro Takashige, Takagi Akito. A boy who just bought a comic sprayed water all over his mouth, but his hands were tightly holding the comic magazine, his eyes fixed on the comic that was claimed to be the returning work of cartoonist Hao Winkuma. I remember these two names. Ashiro Mumha's real name, it seems to be this. The male protagonist becomes a cartoonist, the female protagonist becomes a voice actor. After the comic is animated, the female protagonist voices, and then gets married. A girl who longs for this romantic love is completely moved by this plot and falls into a state of delusion. What a romantic promise! If a man also makes such a promise with me. For the recent events, some media outlets have interviewed the cartoonist. In addition to Takahashi Makoto, Nizuma Eiji, and others have issued statements of support for Landai. As for Takahashi Makoto, who has been hiding his whereabouts and has not expressed any opinions, many media outlets directly gave him a title that was lost. Cartoonist Hao Winkuma and Aho Mumenha are at odds, and published it without any scruples. I like to see humans express their will in various ways, and I hate the existence of people who have no soul and follow the crowd. I, Hao Winkuma, hereby declare that those who do not know the truth and follow the crowd, as a punishment for your choice to ignore the truth, accept the punishment from God. In order to publish this paragraph at the end of the comic, Takahashi Makoto took Sebastian and the new editor of Shonen Jump Pingza to negotiate in a friendly manner for an afternoon. Even Yoshida did not know the specific process and content of the conversation, but the editor-in-chief who strongly opposed it before actually agreed to Takahashi Makoto's unconventional approach. By the way, because of the last part of the comic by Makoto Takahashi, the impression of all the cartoonists on a certain Chuyunabaku suddenly increased significantly. However, after the new serial Dream Eater was published, the group ridicule at the end of the comic not only slapped the faces of those unscrupulous media, but also showed Makoto Takahashi's position and attitude. Of course, many readers were dissatisfied with Makoto Takahashi's arrogant remarks, and clamored to see what Makoto Takahashi's so-called God's punishment was. Is this what you call reinforcements, Makoto Takahashi? After reading the newly released Shonen Jump, Chenben rubbed his temples and complained to a certain white coat who was drawing over there with a resentful tone, "You are causing trouble, okay? Ahem, sorry, I was sick before and piled up a lot of work, and I'm very sorry to say that the endless overtime side quest is open." A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 312. Given the group ridicule in the comic book Dream Eater by cartoonist Hao Winkuma, many readers are ready to see what the so-called God's sanction is. Not to mention Yoshida, the editor-in-chief of Takahashi Makoto. After all these years of getting along, Yoshida has mastered a lot of information about Takahashi Makoto. Although Takahashi Makoto is a patient in the late stage of Shuyunibu, He often issues anti-human declarations and talks about destroying the world and enslaving humans. However, Takahashi Makoto has never put it into action, but only talks about it verbally. In essence, he is just a paranoid cartoonist with excessive fantasy. Although Yoshida also knows that the reason for the group ridicule this time is still because of the incident between Landai and the voice actor's sister, which made Takahashi Makoto, who has also experienced similar incidents, recall some unpleasant things. But, well, by the way, Chen, I don't doubt your ability, I'm just curious. Although he firmly believed that Takahashi Makoto could not become the culprit who destroyed the world, nor could he become the devil who destroyed mankind, Yoshida still followed his instincts and carefully asked about his doubts about Takahashi Makoto's almost cheating strength. Just look at the hesitant and flattering tone when he spoke, and you can tell how hard Yoshida has worked. What exactly does God's punishment mean? My beloved cat, God has many ways to punish mortal ants. For example, using heaven and earth creation strike, using super electromagnetic gun, etc. Takahashi Makoto tossed the coin in his hand, turned his head and looked at Yoshida with a smile. Hey, do you know the principle of super electromagnetic gun? It's actually like this. When I'm talking to you about serious matters, please communicate with me in a normal way. Takahashi Makoto, although Yoshida rarely showed his domineering side, the brief silence before was because there is also an analysis of the principle of super electromagnetic gun. Please discuss the analysis with that weird professor for details. Don't show off those scientific technologies that I can't understand at all. Speaking of Yoshida's sudden outburst, could it be that some middle school student still couldn't understand the principle of super electromagnetic gun after explaining it, so he suddenly turned on AOTN mode out of anger? Alas, my cat, at your level, even if you are sent to the Academy City for 100 years of development. Tisk tisk, this sky-high synchronization rate, Makoto Takahashi, you are indeed the author's own child. You still cannot awaken to become a raw stone on your own, and you will be an incompetent power user for the rest of your life. Hey, are we discussing comics? Suddenly switching to this impure, Yoshida tried to prove to Makoto Takahashi that he was a pure magician, but in return he received someone's contemptuous eyes and gestures. He had no choice but to quickly change the subject. Ahem, according to the clues you provided before, the comic Dream Eater was created based on Yashiro Muminoha. Combined with Yashiro Muminoha's experience, there shouldn't be anything too exaggerated. So, of course, God's sanction will not choose Dream Eater. Makoto Takahashi took over Yoshida's unfinished words, but his face showed a look of contempt. Do you think I would say that? Humph. My beloved cat, what do you think? When the comic reaches the most critical and exciting moment, even ordinary readers can already guess the future development of the comic, but as a big devil, I just don't draw this result. The readers may be complacent about their own guesses at first, but if they don't see the original author's update confirmation, they will begin to doubt themselves and fall into a state of confusion. Tisk, it is really a pleasure to observe the contradictory human beings falling into a state of entanglement and confusion. He. In silence, Yoshida only imagined the world expected by Makoto Takahashi, and suddenly felt cold all over his body. His mouth twitched constantly, and cast a vicious curse with the lowest hit rate on Makoto Takahashi. Takahashi Makoto, you are such a bad guy, you will definitely be punished by God. Don't worry, my cat. Although I really want to create such a scene, now doesn't seem to be the best time. What's more? Takahashi Makoto glanced at the calendar on the wall and showed an unfathomable smile on his face. Hey, my cat, I remember that today seems to be the day when the monthly magazine is released. Because you were busy playing with the little sea otter, so in order not to disturb your interest, I directly handed the comic manuscript to the commander, so this episode of Clannad published today, it seems that you haven't read it yet. Eh? Why did it suddenly jump to, shit? No way. Could it be? Yoshida originally wanted to complain about Takahashi Makoto's godlike ability to change the subject, but when he saw the smile of conspiracy succeeded on someone's face, he reacted instantly. Staring at Takahashi Makoto with a dead look, Yoshida tried his best to suppress the trembling in his tone. Aiken, your so-called God's punishment can't be. Ah, my cat, don't be so nervous. Makoto Takahashi pretended to be innocent and said in a melancholy tone, the content published and sold today is not so much a God's punishment as a test before the end of the world. Although I really want to use my big move right away, but if I ruin the reader's side. Yoshida didn't want to care about someone's devilish state anymore, but planned to go directly to the editorial department of the monthly magazine and get the monthly sample of the cartoonist as the editor-in-chief to find out, but Yoshida, who had not yet had time to cast the super speed spell, was stopped by Makoto Takahashi, and it was at this moment that a familiar but weird voice came from outside the door. Ding dong ding dong. Mr. Yoshida, you have a new express. Let's not talk about the malicious doorbell sound. The positioning device and detection device outside the door. Are the equipment of the people who deliver express delivery this year so advanced? So it's you. Looking at Jing Zonghao wearing a safety helmet, Yoshida showed a regretful look and snatched the monthly magazine from Minotaur Jisang's hand. I said, these days, express delivery. The purchase fee of the monthly magazine is doubled, and the transportation fee is doubled, so the total fee is quadrupled. Thank you for your patronage. In order to prevent Yoshida from repeating his complaints, Jing Zonghao Jisang interrupted Yoshida without hesitation and said the things that made Yoshida angry with a smile on his face. And a certain uncle seemed to be still not satisfied, and deliberately added an ambiguous sentence at the end, this is a special service for you, Yoshida-kun. Hey, Yoshi-san, shouldn't you use the three-stage questioning at this time? And as a Minotaur, have you ever seen a certain divine condor hero Mr. Yang use the cuteness technique? So if you want to play with my cat, you can't be cute, you must use the palm. Huh? Is that so? Blinking hard, Jing Zonghao looked at Takahashi Makoto in confusion, but didn't you say before, Lord Demon, that a self-cultivated actor cannot be bound by a mere script? And my performance on the spot seems to be quite good. Yoshida suddenly had the idea of begging the mystic eyes to kill these two bastards in front of him, but he just glared at the two with hatred, then sat on the sofa with the monthly magazine and started reading the comics. Of course, caring about the content of the comics is one reason, but more importantly, Yoshida said that with his mortal-level combat power, let alone a head-on confrontation with the Happy Celebration duo, he should thank the gods and Buddhas for being able to save his life against one. In the comic Clannad, although Fuko appeared as a thought-body ghost in the middle, watching Fuko work hard for her sister moved every reader who watched Clannad. People who once had contact with Fuko gradually began to forget Fuko's existence, which made many readers depressed, especially at the end of the last chapter of the comic, when Sani's white lie was exposed. It completely triggered the tears of many readers. As Takahashi Makoto said before, although many readers have guessed that the content of the next chapter will be Fuko's complete disappearance, everything is just speculation before the comic is officially published. With the tension and expectation of readers, the first thing they did after getting the monthly magazine was to start reading the content of Clannad. After seeing Fuko-chan had to come to school with Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa because she could not be seen by others, many readers were moved to tears again, but at the same time they were slightly relieved. At least there are still two people who can see Fuko-chan. Fuko likes Nagisa and Okazaki very much, so I hope you can be happy, just like my sister and Yuzuki. The previous content of the comics was all about the happy bickering between Okazaki Tomoya and Fuko. However, after the daily laughter, Fuko performed a divine assist on Okazaki Tomoya, and sent a blessing kiss to the two with hope. Seeing such a plot development, many readers subconsciously frowned. Although the comics have been serialized so far, they have always been very happy, but considering the bad nature of the great devil Feng Guangai and Xiong Zhen, the readers have instinctively detected the feedback of high energy ahead. Just as many readers expected, after the three people in the comics spent the night in the classroom, they woke up the next day and only Furukawa Nagisa and Okazaki Tomoya were left, and Fuko-chan had disappeared, and what made the readers most depressed was that the two people who had always supported Fuko-chan, like everyone else, completely forgot about Fuko-chan. If there is anything about Fuko-chan, remember it quickly. Looking at the comics, some readers who have noticed something is wrong but can't remember it, some excited readers can't help but hold the comics and shout loudly, wanting to convey this feeling to the comics. Although I want to say that the two-dimensional and three-dimensional worlds cannot interfere with each other, but this time, it seems that, the feelings have been conveyed. Furukawa, why do I want to congratulate the young lady? I think I should be the one who introduced Mr. Ibuki to Okazaki-kun, but, it seems that there is another person who connects us. There is another person. Maybe it's Mr. Ibuki's sister, I'll leave first. Teacher Yukimura, who had appeared once in the previous comics, became the master at the critical moment, and made the confused Okazaki Tomoya and Furukawa Nagisa gradually recall everything that happened before, as well as, the existence of Fuko-chan. So when seeing Fuko-chan appear between the two again in the comics, the readers didn't know how to express their feelings except tears. However, the comics did not end there. The arrival of the wedding of Fuko's sister Ibuki Gongza became the last straw that broke the critical line of tears for the readers. Before the wedding, not many students showed up. However, after the wedding ceremony, the whole school was filled with students. All the people who received the wooden starfish from Fengza came, including the Mitsui glasses lady who made the readers' emotions change constantly. Please listen to me, miss. Someone has been looking forward to such a scene, someone has been working hard to welcome this day, and someone has collected so many blessings for Miss alone. We all like her, really like her. So miss, with her thoughts, please get happiness no matter what. If Okazaki Tomoya's heartfelt words made many determined readers begin to waver, then in the last part of this comic, the scene where Fengza-chan materialized and gave the wooden starfish and blessings to her sister completely pushed the content of this episode to the peak of tears. It's not the reader's low tear point, but the content of this episode is really touching. Fengza-chan, should she wake up later, Yoshida, with red eyes, looked at Takahashi Makoto with a serious face after reading the comics, and his tone was full of warning. If you dare to say that Fengza-chan can't wake up, then I guarantee that you will definitely die. Oh? My familiar cat, you are a scumbag, and you actually made such a declaration. Completely ignoring Yoshida's performance, Takahashi Makoto turned his head and looked at Jingzhong Hajisang, smiling and said, judging from the behavior of my familiar cat, the effect has exceeded our expectations. Indeed. So, Lord Demon, when does the game start? Don't be too anxious, this is just an appetizer now, let's talk about it after the main course appears. I hope that when that day comes, we will not become heretics that the whole world is fighting against, I cry every time I read it. I have already begun to understand the way of heaven, but my state of mind still cannot improve too much. Good night, dear readers. Well, and, sorry, the update is a little late today. That's all, meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 313. Today, when Yoshida came to collect the comic manuscript, he also brought a gift. These things are. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida pouring a lot of letters on the table, his face full of disdain. Are there still people who use such old-fashioned ways to express implicit love these days? According to the information collected by Sebastian, the most frequently used way to express love is not like Landai, running to the girl's door, making a promise and then loudly expressing love. Please don't complain about your own comics at this time. And the culprit who caused this embarrassing incident is you, Aiken. Yoshida with dark circles under his eyes, he roared at Makoto Takahashi with resentment. Thanks to you, Makoto, I can hear many little boys roaring at the girl's door at night recently. In a sense, the love confession brought about by your Dream Eater seems to have begun to erode the whole world. Although it is a need of the comics, that kind of love confession is too exaggerated. Where will it appear in reality? Since the first episode of the comic Dream Eater was serialized, the confession of Landai in the comics, which relying on momentum to win, has a great influence on readers. Many people have also begun to imitate the plot of the comics, learning what Landai did in reality, running to the doorstep of the secret crush, and making a bold promise. Although there are a few successful people, most people still kneel down tragically, especially some people who, when confessing, tragically met a severe daughter control guy like Makoto Takahashi. So, guess why Yoshida has dark circles under his eyes? Despite the influence of some negative news, most readers still have resistance to the relationship between Landai and his voice actress sister. However, the team of readers who support their relationship is gradually growing. Especially after the serialization of the comic Dream Eater, many readers with delicate minds, after reading the content of the first episode, vaguely understood what Takahashi Makoto wanted to convey. But showing your support in this way, I think it's a scam no matter how you look at it. This is the comment from a four-eyed fox. Objection. My cat, this kind of thing really happened in reality. It was because of the inspiration from Landai that the comic Dream Eater came into being. If this comic is animated in the future, I will definitely make these hidden truths public at the so-called press conference. Although I am just an ant, I can't let myself live in a world of lies. In response to Yoshida's complaint, Takahashi Makoto, who suddenly had a lot of integrity, exuded an amazing aura. It's not the so-called kingly aura or devil's aura, but the legendary righteous aura. Speaking of Takahashi Makoto, don't say it so righteously. If Landai hears your declaration, he will cry, he will definitely cry. Aiken, instead of saying that. Yoshida pinched his chin and thought for a moment, then a bitter smile appeared on his face. Why not change it to something like the inspiration of the comics comes from life, but it shows an exaggerated plot that is different from life. Maybe Mr. Mashiro will be able to accept it. Didn't you just enter the Roaring Emperor state? Why do you feel like you are in cahoots with the crowd now, Yoshida? Where is your integrity? Speaking of my cat, the performance of Clannad should be very impressive, right? After calculating the time, Makoto Takahashi suddenly looked at Yoshida with expectation. Although I don't care much about the ranking in the monthly magazine, there are always some ignorant ants who want to murder me. Aiken, you don't care, but you still ask. Yoshida's body trembled a little unnaturally when he mentioned this matter. Great, great. I think it's too great, right? Have you seen these letters on the table? Although you, Aiken, received this amount of letters from readers when you were serializing Shonen Jump, but you have to know that these letters were sent within a week after the publication of that episode of Clannad. Oh my, it seems that everyone really likes that appetizer. Makoto Takahashi looked at the pile of readers' letters on the table, nodded with satisfaction, and said the exclusive catchphrase of a certain master, well, this is really delicious. It's delicious. Ahem, profound language often has multiple meanings. Yoshida, who couldn't help but say very violent and erotic words, twitched his mouth several times, but still held back what he wanted to say. Yoshida had read several letters sent to the editor before, and was terrified. He deeply recognized Takahashi Makoto's ability to attract hatred by pulling monsters. Although Yoshida had heard that if the plot of the cartoonist was not pleasing, there would be emotional readers who sent razor blades, but this situation was just a rumor. But after the serialization of Clannad this time, some readers actually did so, and the number was not small. And, why send the razor blades to the editorial department instead of to the cartoonist? No matter how you look at it, it's the cartoonist's fault, okay. As a platform for serializing comics, the editorial department is just a soy sauce, okay. Ahem, please ignore Yoshida's inner thoughts in the above typical workplace shirking responsibility technique. After Takahashi Makoto handed the manga manuscript to Yoshida, he looked up at the clock on the wall. After hesitating for a moment, he did not go back to the desk to draw the manga manuscript as usual, but looked through the readers on the table. Letter. Master of the Phoenix Academy, Fuko-chan actually disappeared like this. This is unscientific. Come out and let's talk about life. In addition to being busy completing the manga manuscript, I also have to take my children to practice, and there are nothing in the evening time, so don't go. Phoenix Academy is fierce. Do you want to die? You actually painted it like this. You have to be careful when you go out in the future. Is this a threat from Jean Waza? Let's not talk about whether the existence of the great Demon King in his true form is something that humans can contend with. If you want to defeat the fierce great Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, you should first defeat the omnipotent butler Sabas-chan, who is beyond human understanding. This sadistic plot is really too loving. Lord Makoto Takahashi, I am your believer, your majesty, the Demon King of healing love, I am your subject. I beg you to let love and healing fluctuate, spread it to the whole world. Although the gentleman's ideals are quite lofty, but the guy who can't figure out the true meaning of love and healing seems to need special spiritual guidance from Teacher Sue. After completing Headless Senior Sister's Insights in the future, I will definitely buy a set and send it to you through a certain express delivery. There are no hidden poisons like corpse powder, nor are there any black technology bombs that explode when opened, just simple ordinary letters, tisk. Are those guys on the reader's side only capable of this? The superficiality disappoints me. After quickly reading the letters on the table, Takahashi Cheng leaned on the sofa with a look of resentment, and snapped his fingers without looking back. Saba-si-chan, get rid of these things. Although the Demon King can completely ignore the filth of mortals, the witch, not every reader is a civilized and polite being, so taking into account the extremely sensitive nerves of the celebrity wife during this period, I took advantage of the witch's lunch break with the children to let Sabas-chan deal with it. Without a doubt the right choice. As for Makoto Takahashi himself. But judging from the degree of resentment, after the main meal appears in the future, I guess the readers will form an army to attack the editors, right? It is said that the guys with Chuyunibu have a strong heart and will care about such trivial matters. It's better to say that because of this, I'm even more looking forward to readers' reactions after the plot of Clannad unfolds. I'm really looking forward to it. Teaching readers, drawing comics is really an interesting thing. Cheng, this guy, will definitely destroy himself because of ghosts and beasts one day in the future. Yoshida looked at a scum in the eyes with a expressionless look on his face, and opened the original meaning Shisui Comics Makoto Takahashi of Home Model. Hey, my beloved cat, there is actually something I have been hiding for a long time. Makoto Takahashi, who was drawing comics, suddenly stopped the brush in his hand and hugged Rin, who was playing with Sadaharu at his feet. He got up and said to Yoshida in a tone that was almost as sad as a farewell, Actually, I don't have much time left. Yoshida's brain fell into a temporary short-circuit state, saying that he couldn't fully understand what "there is not much time left" meant. He is not surprised by the unfounded fact that Makoto Takahashi has very little life left, but Yoshida is thinking about what role Makoto Takahashi is playing today. Yoshida has every reason to believe that even if the Earth is destroyed at the end of the world, this person in front of him will be like a monster-like existence, can still live well. Don't believe it? In fact, Cough. Makoto Takahashi, who was about to explain further, suddenly coughed violently, and red liquid overflowed from the hand covering his mouth. Hey, 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 are you lying? Chen, you are like this. Looking at Makoto Takahashi's appearance, Yoshida, who had been calm just now, was now shouting in panic and throwing aside the manga manuscript in his hand. Quickly came to Takahashi Cheng's side, a Cheng. Takahashi Cheng. You. Bang. The tomato mixed with chili sauce provided by Sebastian, although it looks pretty realistic, the taste is really not that good. Makoto Takahashi waved his hand and tried to wipe away the red liquid in his hand. But this simply has its own adhesive effect, huh? Adhesive property? Oops. After someone instantly imagined a certain Pokemon family living in a stinking ditch, the look on their face instantly became super interesting. As for Yoshida, he packed his things silently, took someone's mission item comic manuscript, and prepared to leave this place of right and wrong quickly. My beloved cat, even if you show an expression like I've been deceived or give me the worry I just had, I will not apologize to you, nor will I try to conquer the enemy you're, at best, it will only make me think of continuing to play you bad. It seems that after using his mind-reading skills, Takahashi Makoto can not only see Yoshida's inner thoughts, but also Yoshida's hidden state. You can also see it, for example now, the look on Yoshida's face is obviously the two special effects of increasing and decreasing favorability decreases and hatred increases. So, can this guy with Chuyunibu really be able to save the world? For a being like Takahashi Makoto, letting him destroy himself is the choice of Steins Gate. Ahem, I'm sorry. Someone at home has been hospitalized recently, and I'm quite busy at work, so I don't have time. I'm very, very sorry. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 314. According to the information provided by Sebastian, at this time, the good friends should have switched to fighting mode, then. Makoto Takahashi shook his white coat and made such a declaration, completely ignoring the people around him. With strange eyes, he stood alone downstairs in an apartment building in Guko. He raised his hand to block the dazzling sunlight and squinted his right eye to look at a certain room. The fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy attacks. By the way, Makoto Takahashi, your body is an exclusive Gundam of a certain model. Does it have the ability to transform? Landai, who was in the studio, was not concentrating on painting as usual. Instead, he put on a tangled look and entered a sluggish mode facing the comic manuscript on the table. As for the reason, do you need to thank Takahashi Makoto? Thinking back to the ridicule of his good friend before, Landai, who was drawing comics, expressed that he felt a little upset. Combined with what happened in the front-end time, and the fact that Takahashi Makoto started a new serialization of Dream Eater at this point in time, I have noticed Takahashi Makoto's good intention to help him, but the way, it is still a bit hard to accept visually. To be honest, Landai was very grateful for Makoto Takahashi's assistance. However, after learning about his shameful confession, it actually became the most popular way of confession at present, and was also imitated by many teenagers. After that, classmate Landai lost his composure. Since the serialization of Dream Eaters, Landai has also received letters from readers. In addition to the usual support for comics, the content of the letters from readers also showed support for the romance between Landai and his voice actor's sister. Although most of the letters were specially selected by Hattori editors to boost the fighting spirit and morale of Yachin Mumenjai, but seeing more and more people supporting him, Landai felt quite happy, so, in Landai's mind, he once again recalled the words of his good friend from before. So, I need to thank that Chuyunibu guy. But, Supreme, now that I have found a girlfriend, I have to take her home when I have time. Well. Landai, who headed towards the studio in the morning, received a special greeting from his mother when he went out. Just like every parent in China who hopes that their children will get married as soon as possible, Lan Dai's mother's face is full of expectation, which really puts Lan Dai under a lot of pressure. Especially under the gaze of "my son has finally grown up," Lan Dai felt really embarrassed. He just grunted and prepared to run away. However, the even more embarrassing thing came from Lan Dai's own grandfather's amazing last hit. "The best, you actually proposed that kind of agreement, you can do better than Nobuhiro. Come on, just like a cheating grandpa in Clannad." The blue-eyed grandpa has that kind of piercing on his face. The look on his face that revealed the truth made classmate Lan Dai wish he could crawl into the ground to defeat the monsters in the abyss. A certain old man didn't cultivate, ahem, it was a certain old man who looked at Lan Dai's classmate who was about to go out, and showed his sinister and domineering side with a few casual sentences. "Oh my, today seems to be the second episode of Dream Eaters. What's the release date? I'll go buy a copy later. Ah." Even Grandpa Lan Dai was completely confused. Regarding his good gay friend complaining about the unfortunate encounter that happened in the morning, the yellow-haired glasses guy showed a happy smile on his face. Even if he is a good gay friend, it is still very happy that such a happy thing happened. Especially when he saw his good friend complaining, the solemn look between his eyebrows completely disappeared. A certain yellow man gave countless likes to what Takahashi Makoto did. After the romance between the CEO's sister and Lan Dai was exposed, Lan Dai was greatly affected. When the ranking of comics continued to decline, the observant yellow-haired glasses man noticed that in addition to being negatively affected by rumors, more reasons came from his good friends who were responsible for drawing. But this kind of thing cannot be said, and saying it can't change anything. It will even make the pressure on Lan Dai even heavier. As a man with yellow hair and glasses who has experienced similar incidents, he knows very well that he wants to get rid of this. In this predicament, the only person Lan Dai can rely on is himself. However, when the comic Dream Eater began to be serialized in a weekly magazine, the man with yellow-haired glasses noticed the changes in his good friend. From being confused at the beginning, he gradually got out of the predicament. "Although I don't know whether the change in my good gay friend is because of his inner strength or because he was stimulated by someone's comics, but what is certain is that the yellow-haired glasses man will never think that the current performance of his good gay friend is." This is what Makoto Takahashi said, "As long as you abandon the so-called moral and hypocritical masks of human beings, you can ignore all the malice in the world." This sounds reasonable but is difficult to accept. Although the worldview of a certain second grader is a little hard to accept, the yellow-haired glasses guy said that this time he really has to thank Takahashi Makoto for saying, "Hey, Akito. Now, the highest." Should we say that Yachin Mumenji's gay friendship has gone beyond what a normal couple can achieve? Both of them are obviously heterosexual handsome guys, but at this time, they are acting like a couple who feel good for each other and want to confess. What kind of trouble is this? Sorry, I went the wrong way. Sorry to bother you too." Takahashi Makoto, who followed the violent girl from a yellow-haired family into the room, looked at the loving performance of the good friends Yachin Mumenji, and immediately showed an expression of catching two gay people who were trying to gain each other's favor on his face, and then decisively stopped the violent girl who was peeking in from behind, and then closed the door directly. The serialization of the new weekly magazine and the serialization of the monthly magazine guided Rin to the path of a magician, completed the introductory education of Shijigo, and accompanied the witch to conquer the world of light. "You must know, Your Majesty, the great demon king of Phoenix Court, is quite busy every day." Takahashi Makoto, who completely regards the Yachin Mumenji studio as his own territory, leaned on the sofa, squinted his right eye and looked at the two people sitting opposite him, with a somewhat unfriendly tone. "So if you don't give a reasonable explanation, then be prepared to be slaughtered thousands of times. Then, common people, the reason why you specially asked to see me today is..." The good friends Yachin Mumenji had been brewing for a long time, and they wanted to say the words of gratitude, but now they can't say a word. Hey, 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 you two, you are not still shy about the woman you just caught in your affair, right? Real men. The great demon king of Phoenix Court will not discriminate against you. After all, there is a pair of dead gays living next door, and it is understandable that they cross the forbidden boundaries under the influence of what they see and hear. Dead gays, I have already said this kind of face-slapping and mocking modifier, Takahashi Makoto, isn't this considered discrimination? Takagi.kun, the words were deliberately drawn out, coming from the violent girl of the yellow-haired family. And looking at the violent girl's unhappy expression, it was estimated that the yellow-haired man would have to sleep on the sofa sadly tonight. Although it is your request today, Landai classmate, I am not interested in your gay friendship, and love at all. So, let's stop joking. Without giving the yellow-haired glasses a chance to clarify, Takahashi Makoto tapped the table with his fingers, and his tone became serious. The reason why I came to you today is to confirm something with Landai. No, it should be said that I want to confirm something with you, Yachin Mumenjai. Although he looked serious, I always felt that Ah Cheng's next words would be full of high-energy second-year waves. The two good friends exchanged glances, and a helpless and bitter smile appeared on their faces. After a long sigh, they were ready to resist the blow. Hey, Takagi-kun, Makoto. Just as Takahashi Makoto was about to speak, the editor-in-chief of Yachin Mumenjai also arrived. What surprised Yachin and Mumenjai was that the editor Hattori seemed to have known that Takahashi Makoto would be in the studio. There was no surprise on his face. He just greeted Takahashi Makoto with a tangled face. Sorry for being late, Fengguangai Yuan teacher. About what you said yesterday. What you said yesterday, Takahashi Makoto is a married man, and his children have already started to embark on the path of cultivation that determines their future, so Yachin Mumenjai, put on a look of being bull-headed. I'm sure you think too much. I'm going to say it now, but why do you have that tangled look on your face, Landai? Takahashi Makoto, who was about to ask a question, looked at Landai's mouth opening and closing, and showed a trace of curiosity on his face. Is there anything you want to say? Okay. This king forgives you. Thank you, Ah Cheng. Landai, is this the tone you should use when saying thank you? Putting aside the brief silence before, why did you put on that completely reluctant expression on your face? Thank you. After repeating it again in confusion, Takahashi Makoto showed a look of realization on his face and laughed wildly. Could it be, ha ha ha, you seem to have misunderstood something. Misunderstanding, being told the truth will make you go crazy and shy, which is the epitome of tsundere. However, at this moment, both Yashiro Mumenjai and Hattori editor were really surprised. Starting the new series of Dream Eater at that special time, I plan to let readers know the emotional development of Landai and the voice actor's sister through comics, so that the relationship between Landai and the voice actor's sister can be understood and supported by the ignorant world. This is what you want to thank, right? Seeing Yashiro Mumenjai's look of being completely touched, Takahashi Makoto did not feel the pleasure he had when using mind reading before, but looked at the two with resentment. When did I say that serializing Dream Eater is helping you? By the way, this is tsundere, right? This time, let alone the duo of Aho and Muum, even the editor Hattori had such an idea. Such superficial thinking is indeed the wisdom of mortals. Takahashi Makoto looked at the expressions of the three people and roughly guessed what they were thinking. After shaking his head helplessly, he said with contempt, "Don't show your dissatisfaction. The ending of the manga Dream Eater is a happy ending for the cartoonist and the voice actor's sister, so Aho and Muum, do you know what I want to say next? Aiken, do you want to say that in reality, the highest will also be with a do?" He actually gave such an answer with a happy face. Speaking of which, Mr. Yellow-haired glasses, do you still have the consciousness of being a minotaur? Humph, Dream Eater is just a comic. When I finished the draft, I didn't add exaggerated techniques such as interfering with the cognition of the real world and dream materialization into it. Of course. Takahashi Makoto squinted his right eye and looked at Landai, and smiled sinisterly. If you are eager to let reality and fantasy intersect, I will kindly modify the ending of the comic. For example, Landai in the comic died a violent death. For example, the Yachin Mumanjai group in the comic was depressed for a lifetime. For example, the voice actor's sister in the comic married someone else with a child. Hey, Aiken, don't say such a heart-wrenching ending with a smile. Please be merciful. The yellow-haired man with glasses looked at Takahashi Makoto with cold sweat, and looked at his good friend beside him who was petrified because of Takahashi Makoto's special vicious curse, trying to find evidence of the reversal. But isn't Dream Eater a manga with inspirational themes? If such a cruel ending appears, you, Chen, will be cursed to death by the readers. Humph. Do you think I care about this? The great Demon King will not be disturbed by mediocre people. I am Hao Winkuma, the Demon King of Love and Healing, the crazy manga artist Hao Winkuma. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 315. The atmosphere in Yachin Mumenjai's studio is a bit depressing. Originally, a cartoonist studio was not a noisy place. No matter the cartoonist or his assistant, during the completion of the cartoon draft, because they had to focus on the drawing, they would subconsciously keep quiet. Of course, like extraordinary existences like Eiji Niizuma or Makoto Takahashi naturally fall outside the scope of the above discussion. However, the reason why Ajumu and Hattori editors are silent today is not that they need to concentrate on meditating on the development of the manga plot, nor that they have fallen into a state of having nothing to say after the discussion. There is no doubt that there is a weird smile on his face. Makoto Takahashi is the culprit behind all this. After Reversi ends, Ajumu, what will you draw next? Not to mention Landai and the yellow-haired glasses guy looking at each other. Even the Hattori editor who didn't know what was going on was confused. He didn't know why Takahashi Makoto asked like this. Teacher from the Phoenix Institute, will there be any problems with Ajumu next comics? For example, do you need to take care of the comics drawn by others? People who are not familiar with it may ask this question, but people who are familiar with Makoto Takahashi know that Makoto Takahashi has incredible strength and a middle-class character, so, editor Hattori is quite polite to ask this. Of course, we can guarantee that editor Hattori's question has absolutely nothing to do with the bloodthirsty glint in Makoto Takahashi's right eye. Searched can on Google. There is nothing wrong with people working hard for dreams or promises, but what happens after they touch their dreams and fulfill their promises? Makoto Takahashi looked like he had seen through the essence of the world, staring blankly at the girl next to him. The two thoughtful people, Aiken Mumanjai, said something that surprised everyone present. Yachin Mumanjai, now that Reversi has been animated, I can say with certainty that you will also leave. Death is not far away. What nonsense are you talking about? The person who was most excited after hearing Makoto Takahashi's words was naturally a certain yellow-haired wife and violent woman. She had been watching from the side, and when she heard what Makoto Takahashi said, she unceremoniously used Rage Blow continuously, aiming directly at Makoto Takahashi's smiling face. Violent woman, give up. You can't hit me because you have the must-dodge skill. Ha 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 ha. While dodging the violent woman's direct punch, Takahashi Makoto laughed wildly. It has to be said that after seeing Takahashi Makoto's desperate look, Ajumu looked at each other and really wanted to join the battle together and kill some Chuyunibu who was laughing so hard. Huh, Takahashi Makoto, huh, you guy. The panting violent woman tried to fight again, but was stopped by the rational yellow-haired glasses man. When we do good deeds, we must be apologetic. Doing good to others is the worst thing in the world. I obviously have good intentions to help you, but you are treated like this. Oh my, It turns out that our lives are like this. The world has begun to enter the rhythm of collapse. Makoto Takahashi showed an extremely aggrieved look, turned to look at the angry Aiken Mumenjai, and smiled slightly, showing a magnanimous look. Do you still want to continue listening? Although I am quite dissatisfied with the unreasonable behavior of someone's wife before, but considering that there will be an interesting game in the future, I can play with you and other mortal ants, so I will make a big deal this time. Mercifully forgive your sin of committing seppuku. Maybe. Editor Hattori frowned and glanced at Makoto Takahashi with some understanding and some confusion. When he opened his mouth to say something, he saw Makoto Takahashi shake his head gently and immediately put it in his mouth. Bien held back his words again. The essence of human survival is not only to meet the needs of the body, but also to keep growing the soul. Makoto Takahashi suddenly stood up and took out a black-covered book from the pocket of his white coat. The book was flipping gently, but the mouth did not stop, and continued to display the inherent Chuyuni barrier originated from Takahashi Makoto. Classmate Landai, when the long-cherished wish you have been praying for all year round is fulfilled and the dream you have been chasing is realized, your life has come to an end. There is no motivation to work hard, no higher ideals. Although you still continue to consume food every day, the energy is enough for the body to consume, but the soul has stopped growing, and the mind can no longer reach new heights. In this way, you will not be able to draw excellent comics, and that kind of Aiken Mumenjai is me. As I said before, death is not far away. Such a thing. Classmate Landai, who was suddenly called, looked at Makoto Takahashi in shock. When he wanted to say something, he was interrupted rudely by Makoto Takahashi. Fall in love with the CEO's sister, get married, and then give birth to children, but what about the life after that? Makoto Takahashi suddenly closed the book in his hand, looked at Landai's classmate coldly, and launched the sharpest three-part sentence. Ask a question. When all your wishes are fulfilled, apart from the labor required for daily life, do you still desire for life? Do you still have aspirations for the future? Do you still have so-called love for this world? But isn't that what you are like, Chang? A certain Huang Mao pushed up his glasses and suddenly intervened in the topic forcefully. However, seeing the sneer on the corner of Makoto Takahashi's lips, he couldn't help but subconsciously pull the violent woman next to him. Huang Mao, the glasses man's instinct told him that Takahashi Makoto's next words would make his wife fall into a state of rage again. I know attacking one's own shield with one's own spear. As expected, in terms of IQ, Mr. Huang-haired glasses, you are slightly stronger than your good friend, but at this level, you are still far from it, Makoto Takahashi said directly, sitting on the table, looking down at Yachin Mumenjai and the two of them. The king-like mode was activated. I have been drawing comics, thinking about life, and exploring ways to return the world to chaos. So, don't compare ordinary people like you to me. Editor Hattori, who had been silent, had a solemn look on his face. Although some of what Takahashi Makoto said was too unreasonable, some of the truth was still obvious, especially after Takahashi Makoto's reminder. When Editor Hattori looked at Ajumu, there was naturally a worried look on his face. Just as Makoto Takahashi said, Editor Hattori is very worried that if Ajumu reverse achieves great success, the two of them will enter a negative state. Do you know why the plot of Dream Eater ends in that way? Looking at the thoughtful Ajumu, Takahashi Makoto showed inexplicable disappointment on his face. Because I don't either. I know, if I continue to draw, what kind of content can appear. The main character in the manga, Mashiro Takahiro, is also Landai's classmate in reality. Landai interrupted unhappily, Hey, Takahashi Makoto, are you doing it backwards? Landai fell into silence, with no ability to refute, and the same goes for Mr. Huang-haired glasses. By the way, do you need the help of Phoenix Wright or Gumaiman? I'll stay up all night to finish Ace Attorney or watch and review Lee Dog High. Just like in fairy tales, most of them end with the prince defeating the dragon or the evil magician, and then rescuing the princess, and the two live happily together, haha. Speaking of this, Makoto Takahashi's face, he showed a disdainful smile, but are the prince and princess really happy? If so, Miss Media, alas. So that is just the ending of the fairy tale. If life is really like this, the world will not return to chaos. It's necessary. Should I say he is worthy of Makoto Takahashi? Such a weird worldview of the second class, the speechless Ijumo and editor Hattori. The moment their eyes met, they also completed the hidden branch line. The synchronization rate of 3 people is off the charts. Originally, I had no plans to serialize it in Shonen Jump. After all, there are too many restrictions on subject matter, and many interesting comics may not be able to successfully enter the serialization meeting. Making such a shocking declaration made Ijumo panic. Wushui, I don't know why Takahashi Makoto suddenly changed the topic, but the two of them listened carefully and had a tacit understanding, and did not interrupt Takahashi Makoto's narration with exaggerated shouts. But it suddenly occurred to me that even if the King of Black Flame is included in the monthly magazine in the future, after we dominate the monthly magazine with our comics, the world will still be boring, and what if the King of Black Flame is accidentally destroyed in the future? What should I do? Do I need to create new toys again? You know, no matter how interesting the game is, it will eventually lose its fun if you play it repeatedly, so. Does it feel like Makoto Takahashi is encouraging us? But why don't you feel happy or happy at all, Makoto Takahashi, you Chuyunibu monster? Alas, ignorant mortals, can't they understand God's will after all? Looking at the confused 3 people and the angry violent woman in front of him, Takahashi Makoto shook his head in disappointment, stood up and gave his final advice, Yachin Mumenjai, if you don't want to die so quickly, then please understand the truth of cartoonists are gods as soon as possible. We are both cartoonists and gods, and we are the only truth in the world. The day you choose to become a cartoonist, Steins Gate has decided everything. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Makoto Takahashi shake his white coat and float away gracefully, the 4 people in Aiken Mumenha's studio looked at each other, and a certain idea resonated in the hearts of the 4 of them. Cartoonist, becoming a god, is indeed a Chuyunibu. Oh, by the way, Landai, there is something I need to tell you in advance, although this will speed up your death process. Makoto Takahashi, who walked to the door, suddenly stopped and turned to look at Landai. Blinked his right eye. In a while, a certain 4-eyed fox will arrange for your voice actor's sister to do a radio interview, intending to let the voice actor's sister explain your views on love to increase the possibility of getting the voice actor for the role. Eh? What? Suddenly hearing such unexpected good news, classmate Landai was instantly furious. So, for the happy ending of the comic Dream Eater, Landai, you have to behave well, otherwise don't blame me for letting the comics and reality intersect and have the idea of merging the 2 world lines. Makoto Takahashi turned around, he waved his hand, leaving behind a sentence that he couldn't understand at all, and walked directly out of the door of Yachin Mumenjai's studio. So Yachin Mumenjai, El Saikongruo. Forget it, some of the thoughts are too shocking, so I won't write too detailed about a certain cat. Just like my friend before, he has already begun to attribute a certain cat to the evil in this world without morality, good or evil. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao SD Mao. Chapter 316. As usual, he lowered his head to read the comics silently due to the silent curse, nor did he talk to Takahashi Makoto about the content of the comics. When Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto's house today, his expression was quite strange. The reason for this expression is naturally because before Yoshida set off. Yoshida-kun, can I ask you something? When Yoshida was about to go from the editorial office to Takahashi Makoto's house, he was stopped by editor Hattori with a helpless smile on his face. By the way, can I refuse? Looking at Hattori's editor's expression, Yoshida immediately thought of a certain middle school student who had been a bit weird recently. According to the information provided by the Little Sea Otter, Takahashi Makoto has been in a very happy mood recently since he went to Yachin Mumenjai studio. When the Little Sea Otter occasionally escaped to Takahashi Makoto's house, he was not teased, but could still eat delicious food that rivals the cooking skills of a young chef. Yoshida-kun, please. Editor Hattori did not feel embarrassed by Yoshida's refusal, but said sincerely again, I just want you to ask the Phoenix Academy teacher. The cartoonist is a god. Damn it. How bad are you, Makoto Takahashi? In middle school, after listening to Hattori's narration, even though he had been mentally prepared before, Yoshida still showed a look of better than me. The look on his face is even more exaggerated. I'm sorry to accidentally overhear your conversation, but Minotaura, who had previously served as the editor of Ajuma Menha, suddenly joined the conversation with an embarrassed look on his face. No, it should be one of please ask the army in. The Phoenix Academy teacher has also been looking for me before, so I'd like to ask you the same question here, Yoshida-kun. Editor Minato Pu is round and chubby, so when he speaks, he is full of energy. Although Minato thinks he is speaking in a low voice, the volume is so loud that several editors on the side of the cartoonist can basically hear it. Then, everyone happily surrounded Yoshida, whose face was getting darker and darker. So now, although Yoshida really wants to pull Takahashi Makoto by the collar and ask, how bad does it have to be before he goes to other cartoonists' homes or studios and starts brainwashing others to promote them? Cartoonist is a god, such a weird concept. However, seeing the almost destructive smile on Makoto Takahashi's face, Yoshida swallowed and suppressed the confusion that reached his mouth. Because Yoshida always feels that if he interrupts Makoto Takahashi's painting now, he will definitely suffer a lot of misfortunes. Hey, my companion cat, are you here? Although Yoshida only glanced at Makoto Takahashi from time to time, Makoto Takahashi, who has intuition, noticed it, stopped painting, and turned around to look at it with a smile. Yoshida, wait a moment. It's a bit troublesome to complete this world-destroying spell. It seems to take some time. So if you have time, take Liuli or Ding-chan out to play jungle or something. I guess you won't be far from being upgraded. As long as you complete this upgrade, as a magician, you will be able to successfully transform into a magic saint. Playing in the wild, that is, going out to walk the dog and cat. Are you kidding me? Whether you are walking the dog or the cat, it all depends on whether the person is good or not. Yoshida recalled a time before, when he was very stupid and naive, and because his understanding of cats and dogs in this world was only ordinary pets, he happily agreed to Takahashi Makoto's little request, but the result, I won't say anything. A figure as small as Ding-chan actually has the power to drag him running wildly. Even Liuli, a seemingly obedient little guy, can immediately attract a large group of people with just a little shout wherever he goes. Different cats? By the way, are those who keep pets in Chuyunibu homes evildoers? So after understanding Takahashi Makoto's hint, Yoshida shook his head decisively, picked up the messy manga manuscripts on the table, and looked at them while sorting them out. It was a real action to express that he would rather stay at Takahashi. Chen was reading manga manuscripts at home, and he didn't want to take those two monster-level pets out. He didn't want to use his life to seduce monsters. Cow Yat. My beloved cat, you are so cruel to reject two cute creatures. It seems that what I thought was right. Makoto Takahashi stopped painting and tapped his fingers lightly on the table, which was rhythmically tapped. Sadaharu and Ruri, who were attracted by the sound, cooperated to use textbook-style triangle double team on Yoshida. My beloved cat, you need the arrogant demon king to cure your abnormal outlook on life. Makoto Takahashi, you should be the one who is abnormal, although Yoshida really wants to activate a certain proud mode and let out an angry roar or a domineering roar to shock someone who should not appear in this world. Cats and dogs are suffering from secondary disease, but looking around, they saw Makoto Takahashi slowly drawing out the magic sword, and Sadaharu and Ruri looked fierce in their eyes. Yoshida gave in shamefully. Sure enough, the previous unfortunate premonition has now come true. Oh? Is that so? I actually went there. You guys came back very early today, eh? Really? Haha, just have fun. 3 hours later, Yoshida was leaning against the wall with a lifeless look on his face, as if he had just been fished out of the water. But over there, Makoto Takahashi has already completed the manga draft and is communicating with his monster pets. He strokes the cat and dog heads from time to time, with a satisfied smile on his face. Ah, how harmonious and loving it is. The picture. Cuteness is justice, sure enough, the greatest existence in this world is love, Kauya. I need to apply to the editor-in-chief to replace the cartoonist in charge. Staring at Makoto Takahashi with hatred, the helpless Yoshida felt extremely resentful in his heart. However, when Takahashi Makoto handed a pile of manga manuscripts to Yoshida, a certain unscrupulous editor suddenly came to life and began to flip through the manga manuscripts at an alarming speed. The plot really goes like this: Yoshida, who was looking through the comic manuscript of Dream Eater, had an indescribable look on his face, and looked at Makoto Takahashi with some confusion. I mean Chang, regarding these contents, where did you know about this? In the manga, the Ajumumenha group has not yet been established. The two of them were still in junior high school. After making up their minds to become cartoonists, they began to create the first comic. As the first work of the two in the comic, it is exactly the same as the real Asian city Mumenjai, the one from Two Earths. What surprised Yoshida in the manga was not this, but Hattori's appearance as an editor. Before knowing that Makoto Takahashi used the experience of Ajumumenha to create the comic Dream Eater, Yoshida had also approached the editor Hattori and asked in detail about Ajumumenha's debut so far. Things to experience. Although editor Hattori did not hide it and told Yoshida a lot about Ajumumenha, a long time had passed, and when Hattori told it, there were many details that he could not remember clearly. However, Makoto Takahashi seemed to have witnessed the entire process of the content in the manga manuscript, and he knew everything very clearly and in detail. Although it is not ruled out that this is what Hattori or Ajumumenha told Takahashi Makoto, but Yoshida thinks it is unrealistic even if he thinks about it. With Takahashi Makoto's character, would he ask Ajumumenha or Hattori these questions? Even if you ask, the visual inspection method is definitely the rhythm of pull out the magic sword or close the door and let Ding-chun and Liuli go. That's why Yoshida felt quite confused and asked Makoto Takahashi out of curiosity. My beloved is a cat, and this is the ability I have after awakening to divinity. Makoto Takahashi's usual rhetoric made Yoshida, who was full of expectations, completely speechless. Divinity, your sister. Seeing that Makoto Takahashi had no intention of continuing to explain, Yoshida, who was full of doubts, could only mutter a few words resentfully and continue to read the manga manuscript. But as Yoshida watched, his face became more and more solemn. It's not that there's anything wrong with the manga, it's just that, it's beyond Yoshida's expectations. After learning about the content of Makoto Takahashi's Dream Eaters, Yoshida was very worried. The manga is based on Yumhajoki. Let's not mention this matter that has been criticized many times by manga artists and editors. Yoshida has always felt that comics with the manga artist as the protagonist want to draw the kind of passionate and burning shonen manga. It is quite difficult to unfold visually. No, it should be said that it is basically impossible. And in fact this is exactly the case. From the serialization of Dream Eater to the present, the previous contents have nothing to do with comics, and the results have not reached the level of Takahashi Makoto's previous comics. Although the incident between Landai and the CEO's sister has indeed attracted a lot of attention from readers, judging from the 5th place result of the previous chapter, it seems that it is difficult for this comic to improve further. If it develops like this, with Makoto Takahashi's current popularity, it should be possible to serialize it for half a year, no, 4 months, right? This is an idea that Yoshida has always had, and he has never told it to Makoto Takahashi. Although Yoshida has tactfully mentioned it to Makoto Takahashi several times, hoping that Makoto Takahashi can change the setting of to become a manga artist in order to escape singlehood, the reply he received every time was that he was full of arrogance. The second grade declaration, so Yoshida said nothing more. After all, as the editor-in-chief, he naturally has to trust the cartoonist. But after reading the content of this episode, Yoshida really felt that his previous thoughts were too naive, and he was a little worried too much. The two people in the comic took advantage of their summer vacation to busy create the first comic, Two Earths. Mashiro-san in the manga has always been drawing sketches and has never officially drawn comics, so it is quite difficult to draw. Although his good partner Takagi-san's creation speed is quite amazing, he can't draw at all. After completing after the plot is constructed, they can only focus on being a soy sauce party. However, in the comics, the two people's determination and will to persist in not working hard are well demonstrated. Takagi-san is lying in his sleeping bag, looking at Mashiro-san who is still immersed in drawing. Although there is no narration to describe it, his determined look has already completed the spoiler. During the completion of the manga manuscript, Mashiro-san saw the ink and scraps of paper remaining on Takagi-san's fingers. There was also no narration, but he just extended his hand to his good friend. After the comic Two Earths was completed, the two of them had dark circles under their eyes and refused to look away as they stared at the comic manuscript on the table, with expressions of joy and happiness on their faces. This chapter of the comic does not unfold with any ups and downs. It just tells the story of how Ajumu and two people completed the first comic work, Two Earths. Although he already knew these things from the editor Hattori, but now as a bystander, witnessing the process of Ajumu and the two completing the first manga draft, Yoshida felt an indescribable emotion in his heart. Maybe he was still surprised by the editing of Hattori in the comics before, but now Yoshida feels that it is completely meaningless to ask about it. It turns out that comics about cartoonists creating comics can also be exciting. Aiken, the content of this chapter, it is very good to unfold this chapter in a flashback way, but at least some hints should be given in the middle. This will confuse readers. Ahem, my beloved cat, it seems that there is a problem with the order you watched. The first part you watched was the end of this chapter. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 317. Although he chose to completely ignore Takahashi Makoto's previous remarks, but when it came to the issue of the voice actor's sister's radio interview, Ajumu still decided to pay a visit. Of course, before coming to Takahashi Makoto's house, Ajumu and these good friends were fully prepared, complete measures to prevent Chuyuni's radio wave brainwashing and so on. The person who opened the door for Ajumu was Rina with a blushing face. Although Ajumu did not have the perspective skills, they could rely on the unnatural look on Rina's face at this time and the time it took from knocking on the door to opening the door. At that time, Ajumu and the two of them had already come up with a super embarrassing guess. Could it be that Takahashi Makoto and Rina are? However, this is not the case. Rina and Takahashi Makoto did not conduct some in-depth and simple research during the day. The reason why Rina's face turned red was simply because Takahashi Makoto's excessively high-pitched speeches were heard by others. It will just feel super embarrassing. After entering the room, Yachin Mumenjai saw a rather unexpected scene. The control in the white coat, who has always been classified as an abnormal human being and is full of middle-level attributes, now shows an extremely unexpected side. He is playing with his two children very patiently. If it hadn't been for their usual sudden visit today, Ajo and Momenha would have almost forgotten that Takahashi Makoto, the middle-class radio boy, still has the identity of father. Rin, you have to remember this magic technique. This is the secret passed down from generation to generation by the Demon King's family. So Rin, hey, don't play with gems. If you want to learn gem magic in the future, absolutely will be captured by some pirate collector. Rin's future is to marry her father when she grows up. CG, if you want to master God's hand, you are still far away. Hey, kid, don't run around while I'm talking to you. The thing in your hand is a chess piece, not a token. Super electromagnetic cannon. This otherworldly move is prohibited in the Demon King's castle. If you want actual combat training, I can use a time machine to send you back to the Cretaceous period. Well, please ignore the horribly lost and brutal remarks when someone educates their children, especially when men and women are treated differently. Takahashi Makoto, do you dare not to show your daughter controlling side so obviously? Seeing that Aju Momenha wanted to ask Takahashi Makoto something, Rina didn't say anything, but took the two little guys out. So after the fun of educating children was interrupted, Takahashi Makoto was quite unhappy. Looking at the two people in front of him, his face clearly showed a look that said, I will deal with you two good friends later. Let's go back, Supreme. Under someone's eyes full of murderous intent, like a murderer's ghost, the man with yellow-haired glasses moved back with some guilt and leaned closely against the good boy. Classmate Yolande is retreating. Oh? The wail of a bereaved dog? Unfortunately, even if you use this rare skill of begging for mercy today, you still have to pay a certain price if you want to leave the Demon King's castle. And Gao. After Chiao Cheng stared at Lan Dai for a long time, a puzzled look appeared on his face. Speaking of which, you two good friends, did you use the soul swap skill before coming here? Why do you feel that Lan Dai's eyes are quite different today? Not bad. I remember that some time ago, it was like an ant struggling in the mud. Has it finally evolved into an amphibian reptile? Classmate Lande, who was being boasted by Takahashi Makoto with his poisonous tongue, now showed a tangled look. Although Landai had discussed with his good friends before coming here today, after meeting Makoto Takahashi, he would ask detailed questions about the radio interview of the CEO's sister, but when he actually faced Makoto Takahashi, Landai, but I found that many of the questions I had prepared before were now unable to be asked. It's not that he was embarrassed to ask because he was embarrassed or shy, but Landai felt that, judging from Takahashi Makoto's secondary attributes, if he asked directly, the answer he would get would definitely make him feel quite uncomfortable. After all, the worldview of the second grade is not something that ordinary people can accept. Hey. It's rare that I take the time to accept the worship of you and other common people. Takahashi Makoto knocked on the table, calling the distracted Lande classmate back to reality, and complained unhappily, Yachin Mumenjai, what a waste time and other things, but committing suicide is an unforgivable original sin. Cheng, actually we came here today because we want to know. I have already understood the purpose of your visit. However, now I refuse to provide any help. Makoto Takahashi interrupted Landai's words loudly, stood up and walked to the desk where the assistant was working. While tidying up, picking up the completed comic manuscript, he started to explain, if you want to know something, you must pay something. I thought you had already understood this truth, but you never expected. It seems that even after thousands of years of experience, mortal bones, they are mortal bones after all. I knew it would be like this. Landai turned to his good friend with tears streaming down his face, and found that the other person also had a Spartan expression on his face. Sure enough, the goodwill between gay friends can be greatly improved by sharing will and woe. Ask a question, cartoonists are gods, what does it mean? Makoto Takahashi, who was sorting out the cartoon manuscripts, suddenly raised his voice and asked the question to his good friends who were comforting each other over there. I will, based on your answers, we will decide to open the appropriate gate of steins for you. Answer me, you common people. Yashiro Mumanjai said that he had already passed the age of being a middle school student and could not think about such a meaningless question that was out of common sense with a middle school mentality. Therefore, in response to Takahashi Makoto's sudden question, the two good friends could only shrug helplessly and enter a state of silence. Can't answer, he. Takahashi Makoto turned around and looked at the silent Yashiro Mumanjai with a weird smile on his face, but he said what Yashiro Mumanjai cared about the most, being a god but not knowing it. Humph, it is because of this that you can't defeat the king of Black Flame, not to mention his highness Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma, who has already reached the level of a demon god. Ha 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 ha. What? Yashiro Mumanjai might not care too much about other things, but when it comes to Nezuma Eiji, Yashiro Mumanjai and the others immediately sat up straight and acted as if they were ready to listen to the teachings. Someone once said that gods are also human beings, but they have done things that humans cannot do, so there are no gods in this world. However, this is just the ignorant view of mortal ants. With his hands in the pockets of his white coat, Takahashi Makoto half bent over, staring at the comics completed by his assistants on the table, almost putting his face on the manuscript, and said slowly in a low voice, in the cognition of mortal ants, the so-called gods are the existences that know everything and are omnipotent. Because gods know everything, they know everything, so with the construction and understanding of the world, and with the identity of the creator of the new world of cartoonists, why can't we call ourselves gods? In short, in a comic, as the author, we understand the origin and ending of each plot, and know every character. The past and future of the comics are not colored, and we don't have any love or hatred for any character, and we don't have boring good and evil emotions about anything, because for every plot or character in it, we have already mastered everything. At a certain time in the future, a certain character will encounter something. The plot and development of the comics are the will of that world, the way of heaven in that world, and what we usually call God's will. However, in reality, all this is not something that mere humans can do. The only person I can think of who can abandon all emotions and treat things is the so-called God. So, we who are called cartoonists are the so-called gods for all creatures in the real and fake world in the comics. Takahashi Makoto, have you really started to call yourself a god? Yachin Mumanjai instantly felt like shit. Although I really want to complain about Takahashi Makoto's serious nonsense, Yachin Mumanjai and the others can't find any reason or facts to refute it. Although the two had been fully prepared to face the Chuyuni brainwashing waves before coming to Takahashi Makoto's house, as the brainwashing concept of this brutal zombie gradually unfolded, the good friends have gradually begun to be confused. Unfortunately, Takahashi Makoto's brutal brainwashing of cartoonists or gods has not ended yet, but has just begun. The content of the comic Dream Eater tells the story of the struggle of Mashiro Takashi and his good friend Takagi Akito as cartoonists. I think you two already know this, right? And the next episode to be published is about the appearance of a genius cartoonist named Nezuma Eiji, which gives a pair of good friends in the comics a goal to pursue. Makoto Takahashi suddenly changed the topic, smiled at the two people in front of him who were in a daze, waved the comic manuscript in his hand, and began to tell the content behind Dream Eater, until the end of the comic. With the help of Takagi Akito, Mashiro Takashi finally relied on the great success of the new comic to fulfill his promise with the voice actor's sister and got together. Landai, don't fall into delusion mode. Isn't the purpose of your coming here today to ask Makoto Takahashi about the radio interview with the voice actor's sister? If you don't find a way to improve your resistance to the brainwashing waves of Chuyuni, you will definitely be played by Makoto Takahashi in the future. Looking at the entire comic Dream Eater, it is actually the life experience of a cartoonist named Aho Mumanoha, so just as I said just now, in fact, all of this has been arranged by God. And that God is me, the crazy cartoonist Hauer Nkuma. Makoto Takahashi has become so Chuyuni that he is hopeless, is he? This guy, Aiken, is hopeless. The yellow-haired glasses man conveyed this message to his good friend through his eyes. Seconded. It's really hopeless, Landai also responded with the same look. Humph. You don't think you can escape the prediction of mind reading by communicating with your eyes? Takahashi Makoto stared at the two people unkindly, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and said to the embarrassed Yachin Mumenjai and the others with ill intentions, "Don't think I don't know what you are thinking. Compared with the Black Flame King, your understanding of the world is indeed far behind. You can't even communicate normally, so you are only at the level of ordinary people. No, in a sense, the new wife who can communicate with you normally is definitely not in the category of normal humans." After the eye contact, Yachin Mumenjai and the others nodded while understanding. "Hey, Yachin Mumenjai, the world we live in is real in our eyes." Takahashi Chen laughed sinisterly and said something that shocked Yachin Mumenjai and the others. "Although we think we live as human beings, but have you ever considered that this world is just a comic or a novel made up by others, and we are just one of the characters?" Compared to Landai, who seemed to understand, Huang Mao glasses hesitated for a moment, and his face immediately became a little ugly. He complained to Takahashi Chen with a wry smile, Hey, Chen, don't say this with a smile, this is a terrifying thing. That existence that we cannot perceive has already determined everything about us, from birth to death. Just as I said before, for us, that existence is the so-called God." Seeing the horror on the two people's faces, Takahashi Makoto nodded with satisfaction, and said to them in a comforting way, "Real man. Although I don't know what the character of that God is like, it is certain that he will definitely not let the characters who know the truth die like in a certain novel." The King of Black Flame also agrees with this. "Death or something, Takahashi Makoto, do you think this is comfort? It feels even more scary." "Okay. Now I regret listening to you, Aiken." Because the yellow-haired glasses man is the builder of the comic plot, he loves to think, so after listening to what Takahashi Makoto said, all kinds of complicated thoughts can't stop at all. Sure enough, after adding the philosophy attribute, the ability of Shuyuni brainwashing wave to destroy humans is a destructive level existence. So, Landai, and Mr. Yellow-haired glasses, do you know why I started serializing Dream Eater now? Takahashi Makoto put the comic manuscript on the table, shook his white coat, and exuded a kind of heart-pounding enthusiasm from his only remaining right eye, "Because I want to interweave reality and comics, and let humans fall into the illusion of illusion and reality. In this way, I will become a true god like the existence that built this world." Ha ha ha. Can it be said that Chen, you are almost a god now? A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 318. A week has passed since Ijumo and Takahashi Makoto talked. Although they were attacked by Takahashi Makoto's brutal Chawith brainwashing wave that day, the two of them did not communicate much about this matter at that time. Judging from Landai's understanding, Takahashi Makoto's paranoid delusions, it's just a typical manifestation of Shuyunibu. However, writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Looking at the content of the new chapter written by his good friend, Landai frowned with dissatisfaction. Ever since the two of them came back from Takahashi Makoto's house, the plots written by Mr. Huang Mao and Glasses recently have not included the exciting content that makes him wow as usual. "Akito, have you recently?" "Nothing, the best." "It's not a big problem, ahaha." The yellow-haired glasses man was embarrassed and scratched, trying to deceive his good friends and get through with a silly smile. If there was nothing, why was there a brief silence before? And this plot? Okay. If that's the case, Kairan, then I'll just tell you the truth. Landai put down the manuscript paper in his hand, pondered for a moment, then looked at his good friend with a serious face. No matter what the plot is, the development of the plot was also the timing of the character's appearance. Although it gave me a very unexpected feeling, when I drew the whole plot, I felt that the timeline was quite confusing and the plot jumps were too exaggerated in many places. Even I can't figure it out, let alone comic readers. So, is that really like this? Sure enough, sorry, the best. After working with Lan Dai for a long time, this is the first time that Mr. Huang-haired glasses has received such a serious comment from a good friend. He originally wanted to say something in defense, but recalling the complicated thoughts in his heart when he finished this chapter, the man with yellow-haired glasses sighed helplessly, and said to his good friend apologetically, "Oh, I know. Today when I go back tonight, I will definitely stay up late to revise it." Hey, Chi Ren. Looking at his good friend who looked deeply shocked, Lan Dai also felt a little irritable inside. He kept tapping his fingers on the table and asked with some uncertainty, "Since that day with Aiken, after talking with each other, I feel that you have been a little unfocused lately, could it be because of Cheng that day?" "Sorry, Supreme, this is the second time today that the man with yellow hair and glasses said this." Looking at the concerned eyes of his good friend, a certain yellow man with a guilty conscience pushed up his glasses slightly and said in a somewhat uncertain tone, "Man. Although my condition is not very good recently, but we have to defeat my new wife. June, become the ace cartoonist on Shonen Jump, huh? At this time, oh, Mr. Hattori is here? I will open the door." The man with yellow hair and glasses, who was increasingly lacking confidence in speaking, was saved by a sudden knock on the door. He got up in a panic and ran towards the door of the studio. Seeing that his good friend was obviously no longer in the state, Lan Dai the classmate sighed helplessly, muttering someone's name with resentment on his face. According to past habits, Hattori editor would tell the two of them about the ranking of the serialized comics before reading the manga manuscript. However, today's Hattori editor was a little abnormal. Since entering the door, his attention has always been focused on Lan Dai. "Mr. Hattori, is there any problem?" Looking at editor Hattori in confusion, Lan Dai asked with some confusion. "Mashiro-kun, I remember the editor-in-chief once said before, Taro Kawaguchi, is your uncle, right?" Editor Hattori suddenly sighed inexplicably and handed Lan the sample issue of Shonen Jump that belonged to the cartoonist in the bag. "Dumb, after reading this chapter of Dream Eater, I realized that he is really an amazing cartoonist." "Uncle, he..." Mentioning this matter, Lan Dai took the sample issue with a puzzled look on his face and turned to the comic strip Dream Eater. Although he had a vague premonition in his heart, but really read when it came to the comics, I still exclaimed, "This is..." The beginning of this episode of Dream Eaters does not tell whether the comics of Ajumu and the two have won the favor of the editor. Instead, the content of the story turns to the past and begins to tell the story about the cartoonist Taro Kawaguchi. If you read a lot of novels, you will naturally have the idea to write something. If you read a lot of comics, you will also be tempted to draw something. I have to say that human beings are really susceptible to external influences. At a certain period have a special love for certain things, and Uchida is the same. As a reader of Young Jump, Uchida has been exposed to Young Jump since he was in junior high school, and now he has entered college. With more than 10 years of reading history, Uchida often shows off to his classmates that he is an experienced reader. Uchida once thought about working hard to practice his painting skills, and then when he had free time in college, he would complete a comic and submit it to Shonen Jump to become a cartoonist. Although it is a good thing to have ideals, Uchida did not become a manga artist. Over the years, my age has continued to grow, and my painting skills have improved from the level of the 2nd grade of elementary school to the level of the 4th grade of elementary school. In a sense, there has been progress. I originally thought that the new comic by the manga artist Phoenix Institute would be the same as the previous comics in the yokai era. It would be a comic about strange battles between various monsters. Unexpectedly, this comic with a seemingly fantasy name would actually be about the protagonist becoming a comic. A comic about the history of family struggle, so when I read the first chapter of the comic Dream Eater, Uchida was quite happy. What Uchida cares about the most is naturally the two protagonists in this manga, who are also real mangakas in reality, Yumha Joki. Maybe Uchida didn't know much about the names Mashiro Takashi and Takagi Akito in the past few years, but after the news about voice actor Miho Azu broke out some time ago, the names of the two members of Ajuma Menha, it has also become familiar to many readers. The manga features Ajuma Menha as the protagonist, and it is also a story about the struggle history of the manga artist. Uchida really can't find a reason to refuse to read it. The content of the previous chapter of Dream Eaters tells the story of the two protagonists who completed their first comic. With excitement and uneasiness, they walked into the editorial department and submitted their debut work 2 Earths to the editor. According to Makoto Takahashi's Bad Habits, the manga naturally ends at a critical moment. The comic was handed over to the editor and received evaluations, but the result has to be postponed to the next chapter. The plot is stuck at the most critical moment. Should it be said that it is worthy of being a comic about the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy? After buying the new issue of Shonen Jump, Uchida complained dissatisfiedly while flipping through the comics in his hand quickly. After waiting for a week, I can finally read the next content. However, it is a pity that at the beginning of this chapter of Dream Eater, the results of the submissions of the two protagonists were not told, but the timeline jumped to the time when the protagonist Mashiro's highest classmate was still Shota. The characters that appear in the manga, in addition to the Shota-style Mashiro's tallest classmate who is lying on the bed reading the manga, there is also a middle-aged uncle with a towel around his neck and wearing glasses who is drawing seriously. This uncle's name is Nobuhiro Mashiro, and his pen name is Taro Kawaguchi, who is also the tallest uncle of the protagonist Mashiro. What are you doing? What I want to see is the result of Aiken Mumenji's first submission, not the sudden addition of memory-killing content. Oh, forget it, let's read it seriously. Although Uchida was a little dissatisfied with the content at the beginning, it was just a simple complaint. He did not skip the seemingly boring part, but just kept talking about it while flipping through the comics. If it were any other cartoonist, Uchida would definitely skip the memory-killing part that has nothing to do with the main plot line. Because Uchida was confident that he could connect the skipped parts in his head, but when he thought that the author of Dream Eater was the queen of the Phoenix Academy, Uchida still chose to read it seriously. When I was watching When the Higurashi Cries, Uchida directly skipped the part about Takano Sansei's memory of killing, so he found out very sadly that the subsequent content was incomprehensible until he recompleted the skipped part. After watching the plot, I regained the smoothness of watching. Therefore, after seeing the opening chapter of Dream Eater and entering the memory-killing mode this time, Uchida, who had been tricked by Higurashi when he cries, said, "This is the only manga that likes to trick readers and kill readers. I will definitely not skip the plot." This chapter of the comic spends nearly half of its length telling the story of Taro Kawaguchi. Although Uchida was quite unhappy about it at the beginning, as he watched it, he gradually became attracted to the plot. The future is just a repeat of history. What happened to Mashiro Takahiro and Mashiro Nobuhiro are so amazingly similar. Should they be called uncles and nephews? Looking at the comics, Mashiro said when Nobuhiro inspired to become a manga artist because he fell in love with a girl in his class and started working hard, Uchida couldn't help but laugh and express such emotion. However, in the manga, Nobuhiro Mashiro did not end up getting together with the woman he had a crush on. Although Nobuhiro Mashiro's manga finally got the chance to be animated and became a hit after being animated, the woman he secretly loved became someone else's bride. However, Nobuhiro Mashiro did not stop his career as a cartoonist, but kept working hard. Finally, when the protagonist was in 6th grade, he died of overwork. Although it was known before that the protagonist Mashiro's tallest uncle had passed away, after watching this plot, Uchida felt an uncomfortable feeling. Even the content of the next comic was a little absent-minded. The comic did not end here, but jump to the protagonist's side. The first comic Two Earths co-created by the two did not successfully get serialized. This is what Uchida said after reading the previous chapter. The result was already guessed. Although the development of the manga is as he expected, Uchida is not getting up at all now. Uncle once said that cartoonists are like gamblers. Hard work, confidence, and luck, this is the true meaning of Kawaguchi Taro's school. Although the memory-killing part has ended, Uchida discovered that the manga artist Taro Kawaguchi was definitely the one who had the greatest influence on the two protagonists in the manga becoming manga artists. Recalling the confident smile on Mashiro Nobuhiro's face, his unremitting efforts, and his embarrassing luck in the comics, he looked at the protagonist's side narration with longing. Uchida was lamenting the influence of Mashiro Nobuhiro. When I was older, I also had a lot of doubts. Because according to the creation setting of the comic Dream Eater, in reality, there should be a cartoonist named Taro Kawaguchi. But Uchida was certain that he had never heard of this person. The doubts lingering in his heart gave Uchida a feeling like a lump in his throat. Forget it, you can read comics at any time, but if this problem is not solved, it's really annoying. Uchida put aside the half-read Shounen Jump and started to search online for information about Taro Kawaguchi. Relevant information comes. Regarding the content of Dream Eater, a certain cat has changed some of the order and delayed the uncle's story a little later. I really feel that the uncle has a great influence on Yachin Mumenjai. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 319. This is actually a real person. Uchida slid the mouse, but his eyes were fixed on the information queried on the computer, and he suddenly burst out with swear words. I'll wipe it. After reading this chapter of Dream Eaters, many doubtful readers, driven by curiosity, checked online to find out who had a greater influence on the protagonist uncle in the comics. Then he expressed the same emotion as Uchida before. Because many people on the reader side never thought that there really was such a person in reality. So what exactly is the content of this chapter Dream Eaters about? Eiji Niizuma has indeed appeared, and the plot of the editor-in-chief and editor Yujiro's personal invitation directly demonstrated Eiji Niizuma's amazing genius. And the results of Ajuma Menha's manga have also come out, and the evaluation given by Hattori editor has also made the readers who watched it feel a bit harsh. However, the real core character of this story has always been the uncle who appears in Mashiro's highest memory killing in the manga is the manga artist Taro Kawaguchi, who worked extremely hard to draw manga until the end of his life. Although this uncle's life ended in tragedy, after reading this chapter of the comic, readers have a very high favorability towards this deceased uncle. Because many readers have already seen that the reason why the manga artist Hohoin Kuma chose to draw this chapter is because he intended to use the uncle's past experience as the highest guide of the manga duo. According to the popular explanation of many novels and comics, Lan Dai's deceased uncle will become Lan Dai's guide into the world of cartoonists, and his spiritual leader. Of course, there are also some distressed readers. When they saw the content of this article, they cursed and accused the cartoonist Phoenix Institute of being cruel and crazy, and actually used a dead person to enhance the reputation of the cartoon. This kind of use of dead people, so unscrupulous. After reading the content of this chapter, I think I roughly understand why my father made such a rude behavior. This issue of Shounen Jump will publish the Dream Eater comic. After putting it down, classmate Lan Dai looked a little unnatural, and the reason was naturally related to the content of this sentence. Classmate Lan Dai was really surprised at the time, and he has a very deep memory of his father's words and deeds of crying and saying thank you at the same time. Although I asked other people in the family afterwards, I never got any answer. But after reading this episode of Dream Eaters today, Lan Dai has almost figured it out. Yes, the best. Although I have always felt that Aiken's words and deeds have always been in the category of typical Chuyuni and abnormal human beings, but I have to say. Putting down the comic magazine sample, the yellow-haired glasses man recalled some after the unpleasant memory, a confused look gradually appeared on his face. Originally, I heard Aiken say that the new wife will appear in this chapter, and I thought that the content of this chapter will revolve around a new wife. Yes, I never expected. Uncle. Landai just muttered one sentence, then let out a long sigh and directly entered the mode of his own talent, skill, melancholy and sluggishness. Alas. As Landai began to sigh, his good friend Huang Mao and glasses beside him thought of Makoto Takahashi's ferocious mental brainwashing before. After sighing helplessly, he naturally entered the same state. Yachin Mumenjai is indeed a role model among gay friends, a model in philosophy. For all the assistants under Makoto Takahashi, today is an unfortunate day. Because, based on the serious delay in the progress of the plan to conquer the world, I hereby declare. As soon as I entered the door, I saw Makoto Takahashi with his feet on the table, his hands folded in front of his chest, and a strange expression on his face. With a smile on his face, he issued the same declaration of being a middle school student as always. As the leader, Tintin's first instinctive reaction was to turn around and shout to everyone around him, "Pay attention, there are high energy ahead," and planned to lead everyone to quickly evacuate the studio that was renamed Demon King City by Makoto Takahashi. It's just that it's too late. As the two most ferocious monsters under the Demon King, Ding Chun and Li Yulai, have already blocked everyone's escape route. Cheng, do you plan to start a new series? After carefully asking what he was most worried about, Ding Ding saw that the inexplicable smile on Takahashi Makoto's face had not changed at all. He breathed a sigh of relief and went directly to Loyal Minister's advice. Mode, Cheng, stop making trouble. Our workload is already very heavy now, so if you plan to start a new serial, let alone whether the new serial can be completed, even Dream Eater and Clannad were unable to submit the manuscript within the deadline. Indeed. The gorgeous stage has already been prepared. Why not take this opportunity to show the dance of miraculous conquest to the world and show off our sky-breaking combat power to the world? In this way, the world will be us, the thing in my palm, everyone in the world is my subordinate, and I, the fierce Phoenix Academy, will also become the only god in the world. While Takahashi Makoto was talking eloquently, several people on the assistant side were making eye contact. After a while, everyone on the assistant side reached a consensus. They walked to their respective tables and started busy work, no longer paying attention to someone who had already fantasized about it. Becoming the Chuyunibu of the god of the new world. The previously completed comic manuscript of Dream Eater has already been handed over to Yoshida, but for the assistant, now is not the time to relax, because the biggest workload is still the Clannad comic manuscript for monthly serialization. After all, the comic manuscripts required for monthly serialization require a lot. What's more, Makoto Takahashi's requirements for the manga Clannad are outrageously high. Tintin knows this very well. When I was finishing the first few chapters of Clannad, my assistant, Ms. Aoi Ueno, the girl who has been working as an assistant since Makoto Takahashi debuted, because when dealing with the characters in the background of this comic, a little bit appeared. There was a small problem, so the frantic Makoto Takahashi deliberately stayed in the studio, stayed up late, reworked, and started all over again. Although other people had similar problems when completing manga manuscripts in the past, Makoto Takahashi did not achieve such an outrageous level at that time, and there was not even so-called critical education, but for this one comics. Rather than saying that it's Cheng's liking for this comic, it's more about awakening the attributes of ghosts and beasts, right? Ding Ding is making such malicious speculations. Huh? The content of this chapter is. Jing He, who was waving his brush, looked at the content in the comic. A trace of surprise appeared on his expressionless face. He looked up to see who had walked in front of him. Makoto Takahashi asked with some uncertainty, "Well, Phoenix Academy teacher, what is the content of this statement?" "Ruko, the content of this sentence is specially prepared for you." Although Takahashi Makoto's face showed a look that was completely for you, the strangeness brought about by that sinister tone, the feeling still made Jing-hee feel guilty for a moment. "I think that after finishing this chapter of the comic, your restless soul will not roar like a lone wolf again. That's right, this is one of the most powerful mysteries of the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy, magic painting, hypnosis and brainwashing method. Drink, ha 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 ha." Hearing this, Jing-hee pushed up his glasses and said nothing more. Instead, he started waving the brush again and entered the exclusive working mode of the assistant side. "Cheng, the plot this time mainly revolves around Ichino's Kotomi, right?" After seeing Takahashi Makoto nodding in agreement, Ding Ding asked with some worry, "I just want to ask, about Ichino's Kotomi, part of the content, shouldn't it be the same as Fuko-chan's ending?" "Man. Because Fuko-chan's plot is a super loving part, so this feeling of love and healing will continue this time. Regarding the ending, there will be, I was about to tell Tintin about the part." Takahashi Makoto, who was content, suddenly remembered something. His face immediately became a little ugly, and then he sat on the ground in despair, complaining resentfully, "How can it be fixed? Even if you have a search engine such a reverse heavens plug-in, but 18 languages, well, finally, the spell of the barrier needs to be modified so that the tear-jerking runes can accommodate it." What Takahashi Makoto is referring to here is naturally the most touching and heartwarming scene in Kotomi's chapter. Before the plane was about to crash, Kotomi's parents threw away the important papers that were originally packed in the box and put the bear doll they bought for her and a letter. After the box containing the bear was found, the letter inside became the biggest tear-jerker in this part of the plot. "If you find this box, please bring it to our daughter. This letter is passed around the world. Although it is written in different kinds of languages, it all expresses the same meaning." When death was approaching, Kotaro Ichino's and his wife did not think of any academic papers, but of their own daughter. That letter used the most beautiful language to describe the world to his daughter Kinmei. He hoped that Kinmei could live happily and experience the world, which showed his parents' infinite love for their daughter Kinmei. Of course, Takahashi Makoto said before that the plot about Kotomi was specially prepared for Shizuka River. Naturally, there is another reason. Glancing at Shizuka, who was drawing, Takahashi Makoto showed a smile on his face. He did not continue to use Chuyuni language to attack his hard-working assistant, but turned around and walked to the desk, also starting to enter the cartoonist mode. Middle. "Oh, it's Huangmao from a certain violent female family. I didn't expect you to call me on your own initiative." Looking at the caller ID on the phone, Takahashi Makoto put down his paintbrush happily, completely ignoring the comments from everyone on his assistant's side. White eyes death glare, and said slowly and leisurely, "Do you need me to give you a special spiritual counseling?" "Man. As long as you have time, His Highness the Fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, I don't mind giving it a good, reset your worldview." "Cheng, stop making trouble, do I have something to ask you?" On the other side of the phone, someone's calm-sounding voice made Takahashi Cheng a little dissatisfied. The voice sounds normal. "Hey. You haven't been fooled yet? It seems like you shouldn't have been merciful before," Makoto Takahashi muttered, making the yellow-haired man with glasses on the other side of the phone have a head full of black lines, and he was confused. "I have the urge to beat the Chuyunibi cartoonist to death. Cheng, after talking to you before, have you gained new insights, and are you planning to find a remote mountain forest to retreat and wait for the heavenly calamity? Wuliang Tianzun. Congratulations, you have finally reached this point." With a slightly regretful sigh, Takahashi Makoto showed a look of grief, and said in a deep voice, "But it's too late now, you have already entered the stage of wife control." When you become a father in the future, your life will eventually come to an end. This is an irreversible process, so don't try to change the way of heaven. Because this is the choice of Steins Gate. You don't have your own soul, you don't have your own freedom. Every day you have to work hard for life, and you can't reflect on your mind and redeem your soul. So once humans, such weak creatures, get married and have children, most of them will enter a state of contentment with the status quo, which means that the so-called life has indeed come to an end. Takahashi Makoto, are you sure this is the cartoonist mode and not the philosopher mode? Ahem, please ignore my middle school ideas and just read books for entertainment. Sorry, I have been really busy as a cat recently. After working overtime for 2 nights, I estimate that I am not far from breaking through the life and death dilemma. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 320. Chapter 320. The name of the comic is. Now that Mr. Huang Mao and Glasses has realized that Makoto Takahashi is trying to activate the Chuyuni 2 brainwashing wave on himself, he naturally doesn't want to become Makoto Takahashi's toy, so he hangs up the phone decisively. Although the purpose of the call was not achieved, which made both Aiken and Mumenji a little depressed, facing Makoto Takahashi directly, even if they contacted Makoto Takahashi on the phone, still made the pair of good friends feel uneasy. But Lande is worried about the radio interview of his CEO's sister, and wants to get more information from Takahashi Makoto, who is obviously the mastermind behind the scenes. The yellow-haired glasses guy wants to relieve his inner demons and achieve shattering void by talking to Takahashi Makoto in detail. No, it should be to regain the same creative power as before, so after discussing for several hours, these good friends decided to publish a message and invite everyone on the cartoonist side to form a team to work on the second Demon King. Just when the two good friends Aiken Mumenji were busy planning their battle, a brave man stood up and single-handedly entered the castle of the second Demon King. That's right, that person was exactly the editor in charge assigned to Makoto Takahashi. On the editorial side is named Yoshida's My Dependent Cat. Yoshida, hey, is the title spelled backwards. For Takahashi Makoto, who was resentful for not being able to destroy the yellow-haired glasses man, after learning that Yoshida came to collect manga manuscripts, he did not continue the task of organizing the manga manuscripts completed many years ago. I took out one of the most loving and healing comics, put it on the table, and started to check the login progress bar of Breaking My Familiar Cat with great anticipation. So the wheel of history called Trouble with My Beloved Cat began to turn. What? Chen, you want to start another serial? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi in surprise, and then turned his attention to the comic manuscript on the table. After pondering for a moment, he rejected Takahashi without hesitation. Cheng's suggestion, this is absolutely not possible. The number of comic manuscripts serialized in weekly and monthly magazines is only much more than the 3 comics you serialized at the same time before. What's more, the work you are proposing to serialize now, actually, we also plan to serialize it in a monthly magazine. Hey! Can't you do that? As expected, my beloved cat, you are still at the level of an ordinary person. Is this a matter of judgment? This is completely impossible. Okay. In response to Takahashi Makoto's resentful remarks, Yoshida had lost his cool and banged the manga manuscript on the table, knocking Takahashi Makoto directly. The excuse was blocked back. Yes, I know you have serialized 3 comics at the same time before, but they were all done in a weekly magazine. It's a weekly magazine, understand? But now you actually want to serialize 2 comics at the same time in a monthly magazine, even if it is a big devil like you, Chen, can't finish it within physical time. Even if you are asked to draw 24 hours a day, you can't finish it? Although he knows that Makoto Takahashi writes comics very quickly, although he knows how hard Takahashi Makoto works when he draws comics, and although he thinks that Makoto Takahashi really wants to start a new serial, But Yoshida also knows, even if Makoto Takahashi broke out in the small universe, he would not be able to complete the manga manuscripts required for 2 monthly series and 1 weekly series within 1 month. Of course, only the monster like Shuyunibu would want to accomplish something that humans cannot do. Really not. Looking at Yoshida suspiciously, Takahashi Makoto curled his lips in displeasure. Is it really not possible? Unless there are 48 hours in a day, Yoshida gave an answer that was incredibly difficult without hesitation. In other words, Makoto Takahashi, you should give up on this. I see, my beloved cat, I understand what you mean. After Makoto Takahashi frowned and thought for a moment, a serious look appeared on his face. He nodded to himself and said, according to the calendar of gods and demons, it is stipulated that there are 770 days in a year and 48 hours in a day, so as long as I, the Phoenix Academy, unify the entire world and enslave all human beings, I will also destroy the calendar used in the current world line and replace it. Become a calendar of gods and demons. You actually started a war to unify the world just to publish a new manga, Takahashi Makoto. Do you think I will be moved by your sincerity and agree? After Yoshida specially emphasized a certain word, his face showed resentment. With a look on his face, he slammed the table continuously as if he was desperate, interrupting Takahashi Makoto's unfinished words without politeness. Believe me, if the Lord of Earth knew your such crazy thoughts, he might, in order to prevent the world from returning to chaos, and brainwashing humans all over the world. Hypnosis and brainwashing, My familiar cat, what a great idea. Makoto Takahashi had completely fallen into some strange fantasy and murmured to himself, sure enough, it would be better to just return the world to chaos and restart life. Trees or something, controlling human beings through spiritual consciousness may be the fastest way. To put it simply, change, no, it should be to allow human beings to re-understand the world in accordance with the needs of the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy. Salt is very sweet. The chili is very spicy. Yoshida chose to completely ignore Takahashi Saichuji's paranoid delusions, and at the same time, he also turned his attention to the manga manuscript on the table. Frowning slightly, Yoshida picked up the manga manuscript on the table, preparing to see what kind of manga it was that would make Sei Takahashi make a desperate request to be serialized twice in a monthly magazine. Yoshida's initial plan was to take a look at the comic manuscript. If it fits the theme of Shonen Jump, maybe Takahashi Makoto could submit it directly to the weekly magazine for serialization. Judging from the thickness of the comic manuscript in his hand, it should be no problem to serialize it in the weekly magazine for 2 months. This comic doesn't even have a name. Have you not thought about it yet? Yoshida almost bit his tongue when he said the last word. Because after flipping through 2 pages casually, let alone the name of the comic, even the title of the first episode was not written. At the beginning of the comic, there is a little girl running. To be precise, it should be the back of a little girl with twin ponytails running. What surprised Yoshida a little was that the little girl seemed to be in a huge maze, a maze composed of black and white grids. Although Yoshida wanted to complain about Takahashi Makoto's lazy background at this moment, he only saw the beginning, and it seemed too early to make a decision now. When the little girl pushed a door in the maze that looked like an exit, the style of the painting suddenly changed. The huge clockwork gears were turning slowly in the air, the tall buildings were strangely suspended in the air, and the city was in ruins, as if a fierce battle had just taken place. Although there was no narration in the comics, Yoshida suddenly felt that the end of the world was coming. A long-haired girl stood in the ruins of the city, looking up at a huge object in the sky. Although the comics only gave a side description of the girl, without any text narration to describe it, Yoshida could vaguely understand that the long-haired girl and the strange object in the sky were in a hostile state, and the reason why the whole city became like this was perhaps because of the fierce battle between the two. The long-haired girl jumped up and flew directly to the huge object in the air, but what greeted the girl was the remnants of half a tall building. Like many comics, the comics did not draw the scene of the girl dodging, but switched to the scene of the half-tall building colliding with other tall buildings. And the long-haired girl, as Yoshida expected, used a skill similar to teleportation and appeared in the air outside the range of the collision aftermath. However, what greeted the girl this time was a beam of light as brilliant as a flame. Too much, the twin-tailed girl who appeared first was excitedly grabbing the fence suspended in the air and shouting loudly. For her alone, the burden is too heavy. But there is nothing we can do about it. Appearing next to the twin-tailed girl was a creature similar to a rabbit, but the strange appearance clearly did not belong to the normal human world. But it doesn't matter, she should have realized it. While the twin-tailed girl was talking to this strange creature, the long-haired girl was knocked down by the huge creature in the air and fell into an absolute disadvantage. Looking at the long-haired girl, she was thrown hard into the ruins of a building in the air like a sandbag. Although this kind of behavior of killing girls in battle has also been adopted by many comics, but the appearance of such a scene at the beginning, still made Yoshida's mouth twitch. Such a cute girl, actually wants to kill at the beginning. Yoshida really wants to pull a guy in a white coat and ask, Takahashi Makoto, do you still have the so-called humanity? If you give up, it may end here. But if it's you, you can definitely rewrite your fate. There is no need to lament this inevitable destruction, just rewrite it by you, because you have such power. Really? People like me, can I really do something? Can I change such a fate? Of course. So come and make a contract with me, become a magical girl. When the strange creature persuaded the twin-tailed girl, it depicted the girl's actions and expressions to show the changes in the girl's mentality, from fear and worry at the beginning, to hesitation in the middle, and finally seemed to have made up her mind. The series of changes in the twin-tailed girl made Yoshida nod in agreement subconsciously. It is already certain that this girl with twin ponytails will be the protagonist of this comic. In order to join the battle and change her tragic fate, she signed a contract with the strange creature and changed her job to become a magical girl. Although Yoshida has roughly deduced the direction of the comic's development, he still has a weird feeling in his heart. Is it because it is a comic with a female protagonist? No. Is it because it is a setting that is overused like a magical girl? Not either. What's next, Where is the comic manuscript? Yoshida was about to continue looking through the comic manuscript, but found that the comic manuscript on the table was gone. He was stunned, and when he looked up, he saw Takahashi Makoto, smiling and holding the remaining comic manuscript. Yoshida smiled awkwardly, and said to Takahashi Makoto in a flattering way, Makoto, can you give me the comic manuscript? My beloved cat, how do you feel? Do you think that the girl fighting to rewrite her fate, from being cowardly and unconfident to being full of courage, is super loving and super healing? Yeah. This setting is full of positive energy. Yoshida looked at the playful smile on Takahashi Makoto's face, and always felt that the other party seemed to be hiding something, but the desire to continue reading made Yoshida ignore all the incongruities. And that weird creature, is the creature that wants the twin-tailed girl to sign a contract. It feels very cute. Very cute. Very adorable. Ha 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 ha. After hearing Yoshida's evaluation of a creature that had been conquered many times, Takahashi Makoto suddenly laughed wildly and patted Yoshida's shoulder fiercely. My cat, you are really an interesting guy. Since you are so interesting, the serialization of this comic will be delayed for a while. Makoto, have you decided not to serialize it again? Yoshida was stunned at first, and then his face did not show a happy expression, but was full of doubts. It's not the right time yet, so, don't even think about reading the rest of the comics. So, Chen, when do you plan to start serializing this comic? After finishing serializing Clannad. After all, as a comic in the Love and Healing series, how can a single Clannad satisfy the readers? Takahashi Cheng seemed to have thought of some beautiful pictures, Smiling like a fox, and my beloved cat, I just decided on the name of this comic. Finish the content first and then think of the name. Is that your style? So, the name of the comic is. Well, let's call it Magical Girl Madoka Magica. I'm ready to dig a pit and trick people.